Frenchie's Art Gallery, located on historic Oak Street beside the Maple Leaf Bar. With over 3,000 square feet of space, it features a large gallery front room and Frenchie's personal art studio. Frenchie's Art Gallery is also connected to the Maple Leaf Courtyard, which is ideal for the New Orleans night scene. Frenchie's Art Gallery, 8314 Oak Street. Yeah, you're right.
But here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. We have a jam-packed hour for you. I cannot wait. Hey, but first I have to talk about this great weekend. I've been building it up for the last 2 weeks. Of course, there's the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. I had a great time there. I went on Saturday. It was fabulous. Such great atmosphere. The bands were fantastic. And the weather was good until Sunday. Apparently, it was very bad. And that also affected the other great thing that happened this weekend, the Zurich Classic. That's right. It was such a good time. I went on Thursday. The new two-man format, it just worked out perfectly. Everybody was raving about it. But it rained on Sunday. They had a 6.5-hour delay. But I got to tell you, they came back. And then Kevin Kisner and Scott Brown, that team brought the excitement because Kisner hit a 94-foot chip, as you probably already know, to put it into a playoff. And don't forget, remember they had 7 of the top 10 players in the world in this tournament, and only one of those got into the top 4. That was, of course, Jordan Spieth. He finished 4th. But the playoff on Monday was Kisner and Scott Brown, along with Jonas Blixt, who you see there, and Cameron Smith. And as clutch as the teams were on Sunday, well, they missed a lot of putts because it was a sudden death overtime playoff thing. They could have won on any hole, and both teams missed easy putts. But finally, that team we just saw of Blixt and Smith, they won on the 4th playoff hole. Congrats to them, and they will get exemptions for the entire next year. Hey, let's move on to the NBA playoffs. It is round 2, and the Pelicans are not there, but Kawhi Leonard and, of course, James Harden, they are the teams in the Western Conference playing against each other. Last night, it was a shocker. Not that the Rockets beat the Spurs, but the way they did. They were up 30 at halftime in San Antonio and ended up winning that game by 27. Hey, the best team in the NBA, though, by most people's estimation, is the Golden State Warriors. That's the other Western Conference semifinal. You have them playing against the Jazz, who just beat the Clippers. And that, of course, is the big four you see there, Durant and the rest of them against those guys. You got Joe Johnson and Gordon Hayward. Obviously, Golden State's a big favorite. In the Eastern Conference, it's the Cavs and Raptors. You got LeBron and Kyrie. Those two are going up against DeRozan and Lowry, and that should be exciting. I think the Cavs are obviously the NBA's defending champion and a decided favorite. Also, the Celtics and Wizards. You got two great point guards going against each other, John Wall and, of course, Isaiah Thomas. And don't forget, man, this is the big thing for the weekend for the sports fans here was the NFL draft. And that's right, the Saints had 6 of the top 103 picks, including 3 of the top 45. Did they pick wisely? I guess we're going to find out because Lyons Yellin is going to join us next, and he's going to tell us all about it. And I promise you one thing, Saints fans, he will not candy coat this at all. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks. He was up in Philadelphia. He knows what's going on. Don't forget, this weekend, we talked about it last week, but the 143rd running of the Kentucky Derby is going to be right here. We're going to, obviously you can watch it on TV, but I have Tom Amos, who was in the Derby last year with Mo Tom. He's going to join us from Churchill Downs and let us know all about it. Hey, don't forget baseball. I have to gloss over it, but the LSU Tigers and Southeastern Lions both swept their conference opponents this weekend. But here's, I got to tell you, the best and biggest news of the weekend. Our man, Jarius Little J.J. Robinson, finally got his new liver that's been 14 years in waiting for this. I was with him last week. Drew Brees showed up at Walk-Ons. It was such a special event, and I love this little guy. He's one of the best. If you've ever been around him, you know what I'm talking about. What a great spirit. But I've also got 2 legends on this show. Rodney Holman, 14-year NFL vet, 3-time Pro Bowler, also Tulane legend, and Jeff Wickersham, LSU quarterback. When he left, he was the all-time leading passer. All that is next, right here on Primetime Sports. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Primetime Sports. Hey, you remember last week we had the big draft preview. We had Ryan Fitzgerald from the Senior Bowl, of course, Mike Detillier, even Bernie Halpern talking a little bit. And by the way, our guy Duke Riley, who was right here, was an early third-round pick. He was the 75th pick of the draft, the third round. So congratulations to him. And he's joining Deion Jones, unfortunately, with the hated Atlanta Falcons. But a guy that was at the NFL draft, covering it literally from Tuesday through Thursday night through the first round. He's been a guest on this show before. His name is Lyons Yellin. We're going to talk all about the recap of the draft, particularly with the Saints. And here he is. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
What's up, my man?
Danny Terrio, Dance Fever. You're looking good, my friend.
You know?
Yeah, you're right.
Got to keep it fresh.
My man has been in Philly. You can tell. He got the extra button down. I'm loving the look, brother. All right, you're back. You're looking healthy.
Yeah.
You're looking, obviously, you got some sun on you.
Yeah.
Tell me about your Philly experience.
Man, I tell you what, Philly put on an absolutely fantastic draft. It was bigger and better. The scale of it was just, it's hard to fathom unless you see it.
You were in Chicago last year,
I was in
correct?
Chicago.
So they stepped it up even more.
They stepped it up. It was rainy over the first 2 days we were there, and we got a tour of where it was at Eakins Oval, right in front of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And I was wondering if they're going to be able to complete it on time.
Look at the people,
but they
man.
did. I'm telling you, Philly fans turned out in droves. They said about 80,000 people there. Tons of excitement. The interactive experience with all the digital boards was phenomenal. Philadelphia did a fantastic job. The police were great. Everybody was great, funneling people in there. And I have nothing but positive things to say about it. First outdoor draft.
Philly's a fun
ever.
town.
It is.
They got some crazy fans, but a lot of cities do. But they're rough on the opponent, no doubt about it.
Next year it'll be in Dallas. First
Yeah.
time in Philly since 1961.
I believe Philly had the very first draft was that
From
correct?
1957 to 61 it was there. They had it in a small hotel. It was a dinner. I think it was 17, 20 rounds, something like that. They used to have it used to be quite a bit longer.
Well, you weren't there because you had to go to a family engagement on Friday, but you missed the greatest announcement ever. Drew Pearson got in the faces. I love this. He's like, the 5-time Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys, and of course their division rival, and Philly and
Sure.
Dallas hate each other. So he got booed raucously, but that's one of the most memorable introductions I've ever had.
And you know what? He's right. I mean, think about all the players you find in the late rounds or undrafted free agents. I mean, just because you're a first round or second round pick doesn't mean you're guaranteed to make it in the NFL. Most of those guys wash out, after 2 or 3 years. After 3 years
Tom
anyway.
Brady had a great tweet. Did you see that?
I did.
Hey, he was the 199th pick. He said number 232, which is Julian Edelman, and 5 undrafted free agents. Had 7 guys that were either at the end of the 6th round or beyond, starting on that offensive team out of the 11. That's pretty remarkable.
It is. And look, I don't think, like I was saying, there's no guarantee. And it's really, these teams look at it, they weigh the value of the pick versus the player. And to me, it's so hard to say which one you put more value on, because you never know how these guys are going to develop.
That seems like a segue somewhere, and we're going to get to that real quick, because I don't mean to cut you, but I know you were kind of talking, because that's what the Saints were talking about, value. Before I get there, I want to say this, because this is my takeout of the first, especially the first half of the first round. Everybody said this is a defensive draft. I mean, every mock draft had defensive player after defensive player. Well, every mock draft was wrong, because out of the first 12 picks, you had 8, not just offensive players, but 8 skill position players.
3 receivers in the top 9.
3 receivers in the top 9. 3 quarterbacks in the top 12. We knew the 2 running backs were likely going to go. Obviously, Fournette and obviously McCaffrey. But when you saw Trubisky get traded up to 2, I mean, what were your thoughts? You were there. What were your thoughts about this run, and particularly Trubisky?
Well, my first thought was, thank God Ryan Pace is no longer with the New Orleans Saints. My
He
second
is the Bears
thought,
GM.
my
Right.
second thought was this guy's an idiot. I mean, why are you going to trade up one spot to take? San Francisco played him. I mean, Monday morning
time.
quarterback Peter
Right.
King recounted the story, amazing story of how they played Chicago. But Chicago gave up a lot to move up one spot to take a player that the 49ers weren't even interested in.
They weren't even interested in.
He's gambled his entire career on Trubisky, and I think it's a bad bet.
And Mike Glennon's sitting there just signing. He's supposed to make
Right.
between 14 and 18 million, and he just signed. He's like, wait a y'all moved up and traded a bunch of picks, and I just came here as a free agent?
For a guy that's played 13 games in college football, I mean, I think NFL teams are so bad at evaluating the quarterback position, and that's just a fact.
Well, speaking of that, I have to say this, because after the draft, it was said, and this is obviously no new news, but Pat Mahomes, they were saying they would have taken him. He got picked one slide before Kansas City Chiefs jumped up and took him right before the Saints at 11. That would have been controversial, I think, around the city of New Orleans with Drew Brees obviously still looking great.
Personally, I don't trust Sean Payton to evaluate or develop quarterbacks. He's never been able to do that. Drew Brees came here already a proven NFL quarterback, and ever since then, Sean Payton hasn't developed anyone. He hasn't been able to identify a quarterback in the draft. He hasn't been able to foster one and bring one along. They've all been, failures so far. So for him to say Mahomes is the guy, I don't see it personally. And I don't trust the Saints organization to identify it because they passed on a guy that seems so obvious to me and Deshaun Watson and let him fall to Houston.
Well, there's no chance I'm getting Sean Payton on the show now. Thank you.
Well.
I'm just kidding. Hey, but by the way, before we talk about who they got, because Marshawn Lattimore was supposed to be anywhere from 3 to 7, but the guy that you thought they should have taken, and you're not alone in this, is a guy that played his football right there in Philadelphia.
Hassan Reddick. He kind of a hybrid player. He can play any linebacker position, put his hand in the dirt, play defensive end. He's about 240 pounds, 6'2", fast, blazing fast.
Jumping over people.
Ran a 4.52 40 at the combine. Very athletic, has a great story. Just a hard worker, kind of in the mold of a Duke Riley kind of guy, Deion Jones, very similar skill set. And I think that's what the Saints needed. They have been so hesitant to draft one of those guys, one of these hybrid players. And then you look at across the division, now you've got Quan Alexander and Kendall Beckwith in Tampa Bay.
Two LSU guys in
Deion Jones and Duke Riley.
Two LSU guys in Atlanta.
The Saints got played in this draft, it seemed like to me. They missed on Foster. By one pick, they're on the phone with him, and then Duke Riley goes one pick ahead of them at 75.
And I'm going one more, and you may not believe me, but I really felt they would take Dalvin Cook at 42, I believe, because they end up with Kamara in the next round, and then because that's three guys that I thought during the draft that they were one away from, and they end up getting obviously the safety Marcus Williams. But the fact is, I didn't even know about the Mahomes, so I think they missed out. In their minds, at least 3 and maybe 4 guys that picked one pick before they were going to take them.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the way the draft happens sometimes. And so I don't fault the Saints for taking Ryan Ramczyk with the 32nd pick. It's not a glitzy pick, but you have to draft an offensive lineman to somebody to replace Zach Strief.
He was supposed to be the number 1 offensive tackle in the draft. So, Cam Robinson right there.
Everybody you heard it a lot over the draft. Everybody wants a Dallas offensive line, but nobody wants to draft it. I thought that was a good pick.
Right.
But again, I think you build your defense from the inside out. I think when you do that, you can cover up a lot of deficiencies in the secondary. But the Saints seem to be stuck in this mode that they want to recreate not only their team from 2009, 2011 when they had so much success, but they also want to recreate what Seattle did building their secondary. And instead, they're not evolving with the league and finding these fast hybrid guys that are a little bit lighter, that can fly around the field and cover all of these different passing options. To me, it just seems like they're stuck in the past.
It was a dagger to me. I really wanted Reuben Foster. I think he's the second best pure. I think he's the best pure football player in this draft. And only Myles Garrett, I think, I would maybe take over him. That's how I felt. I know he had the issues off the field, so I can't take into that in account. Obviously, every team did, so he dropped to 31. But you talked about secondary, and I have to bring it up. Their very first pick, like I said, was supposed to be a top 3 to 7. That's where he was projected. He falls to 11, and it's not like cornerback's not a position of need.
No.
So you got Marshawn Lattimore, and I'm going to kind of combine him with Marcus Williams, a ball-hawking safety who they say can play a little bit of everything.
Right.
And he got 10 picks in the last 2 years. That's something – I don't know if the Saints have had 10 picks in the last 2 years. So
yeah.
The bottom line is – talk about these two guys and what they might bring to the Saints.
Well, I think let's start with Marshawn Lattimore. He's 20 years old.
Right.
He ran a 4.36 at the combine. He's got all the measurables. Very athletic. From what I talked to a documentary film crew that had been following him around since January, and they said out of all the players in Arizona training for the combine, nobody was better at taking coaching from new people and adjusting quickly on the fly. That his athleticism was far and away better than everybody else out there. So he's a freak on the field, and he has the ability to develop.
I feel like there's a butt coming up.
Because
I was like, they did a good job with this pick.
And I don't have a problem with this.
Right.
And I was preaching this a lot before the draft, that the Saints need to take players to develop them. They can't be expected to play right away, and I think he's one of them. If people expect him to walk in on day one and start opposite of Delvin Breaux and be a lockdown corner, That's not him. He's going to need a little bit of time to adjust, and that's how it is with all
He's 20
corners.
in the NFL. That's very young. You're playing
But
against
it's a good
grown men.
situation from him. With all the Ohio State guys here, Ted Ginn is a father figure to him. He spoke very highly of their relationship. They went to the same high school in Cleveland. Plus, he played with Mike Thomas, Von Bell. Those guys are going to be able to show him the ropes. He's going to be able to be around what he called family, and I think that's a positive thing for him.
Any other comment on Marcus Williams? I mean, that is the third pick. That's the 42nd pick. That's still a high pick.
He played a lot of single high in college. It seems like the Saints are really trying to have three safeties and also prepare in case they lose Kenny Vaccaro after this year. So we'll see about that. But to me, that's the thing with the Saints defense. We just don't know. They're playing more three safety, where you see the rest of the league going to these hybrid type linebackers.
Three third rounders. I mean, that's rare. They trade up to get Kamara. I'm gonna put them all together. Give me a quick nugget. Alex Anzalone. Obviously, Kamara was the first one. Anzalone. And then, obviously, Trey Hendrickson, who they finally got a pass rusher, but he's from Florida Atlantic. Talk about them real quick.
Yeah, look, the Kamara thing, I thought that was unnecessary. I think that you didn't need a third down back in this draft. You have a couple guys on your roster, Marcus Murphy, Daniel Lasco. Give those guys a chance to develop. The Saints were the number 2 offense in the league last year. I mean, come on. And Mickey Loomis's justification of trading up, getting this next year's second-round pick now is absolutely ridiculous. So that's like the kid who asked for his allowance early and then is broke when he needs it.
That's me.
Yeah. So look, the other
that's my son for sure.
The other guy, Hendrickson. You like his athleticism. He played well against Florida.
Every shot I have of him is sacking a quarterback. Now,
yeah,
he did it against Florida a few times. I know.
I like this guy. He seems athletic. He seems like he's a hard worker. But you just have to wait and see with these guys how they adjust to the NFL. Do you want to compare him to Davis Tull? Maybe a little bit, but
4 inches taller.
Yeah, and not as many injury problems, but you do have those with Alex Anzalone from Florida. He didn't play like 21 games in college, so had dealt with a broken arm, several injuries along the way. But he seems like an instinctive player. But the Saints have had injury problems on defense for the last few years. They keep drafting guys with injury problems. It seems like you'd want to shy away from that. Whoever's telling them these guys are okay clearly hasn't been right.
Dude, my man, Don Johnson. You don't see him. He was on Miami Vice, and look at him right here.
Man.
His name is Lyons Yellin. Do you think the Saints did okay free agency-wise?
Yeah, I think they did okay.
Adrian Peterson, any thoughts?
I like the Adrian Peterson thing. I think right now, if I had to guess, with that division, the Saints are 6-10, 7-9 again.
No hope coming from Lyons Yellin, WWL.
Sorry.
He says it like it is. You got to appreciate that. There's no smoke being blown up, no rose-colored glass with him. He's saying it like it is. I'm hoping he's wrong, but he's rarely wrong, so I hate that. Hey, I got to go right now because we have a huge show. This is just the beginning. I've got legends. That's right. Rodney Holman, 14-year NFL veteran, 3-time Pro Bowler, and Tulane player, Hall of Famer as well. And Jeff Wickersham, he left the Tigers as the all-time leading passer, and that's right. He is still second on that list behind only Tommy Hudson. Coming up next right here on Primetime Sports. Hey, I want to thank Lyons Yellin for that in-depth, thorough look at the Saints draft and, of course, all the great LSU and Tulane players that are now going to be hopefuls in the NFL. But coming up next, this is the treat I've been waiting for a while. You remember a few weeks ago I had Charles Alexander and Clinton Winslow on the show? Well, they both have a connection to my next guest. Clinton Winslow played at Tulane with my next guest, and Charles Alexander played in the NFL for the Cincinnati Bengals. Well, this guy's name is Rodney Holman, and Tulane fans, this is going to be a treat because, in my mind, one of the greatest players, regardless of position, in the history of Tulane Green Wave football. 14-year NFL career, 3 Pro Bowls with the Cincinnati Bengals, 11 with the Bengals, 3 with the Detroit Lions, and, of course, that great Tulane career. His name is Bubba Smith. No, just kidding. It's Rodney Holman. I do have a shot, I have to say, that looks like Bubba Smith. When you were in the Sugar Bowl Hall of Fame, if Will will put that up real quick, I wasn't planning on going there. We were like, man, was he at Police Academy?
I get that quite a bit.
Do you?
Hell yeah, I get that quite a bit.
I never thought about it until I saw that picture, and I thought
it was ironic with that same situation.
Right?
Bubba Smith went to Michigan State.
Right.
and I ended up signing my letter of intent to Michigan State. So it was kind of strange.
Did you really?
Yeah, because I wasn't but 40 miles from the university.
Right, you're from up there, Ypsilanti, right?
Right, from Ypsilanti.
Okay, let's start there. I mean, that's interesting. So you signed a letter of intent. What happened there?
Well, Michigan State offered me, said I could wrestle and play football.
Right.
So I was an All-State and All-American in wrestling as well. So I enjoyed wrestling also. Tulane said I could wrestle here, but we didn't have a wrestling program.
You can wrestle, but it's going to have to be in the dorm room.
You know, Larry never alluded to me that Tulane never had any wrestling down there, but they did give me an opportunity to say, oh, yeah, you can wrestle down there. And I guess it was kind of an inside joke because there was no wrestling program down there. But that's why I got recruited all over the country, and Michigan was 8 miles from me. And my dad used to every year help build that stadium every year. So, you know, he had some of those players.
Rodney, that's cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, he had some of those players. Some of the players worked with him, and I didn't find that out until I got to Cincinnati. It was one of the linebackers for the University of Michigan. He worked with. He said, oh yeah, I know your dad. He said, yeah. I said, oh, so you the one been feeding my dad? Because my dad said, I don't know about you going to Michigan. The things up here, and I said, well, okay, but. Michigan State, I think Sherman Lewis was the individual that tried to recruit me. Daryl Rogers was the head coach at that time. And, you know, I remember kind of seeing Sherman because Sherman went on to go into the NFL and become an offensive coordinator, a few Super Bowl rings with the 49ers, and he ended up finish up with Detroit, but he was all over the league. But, you know, a bunch of those guys that did recruit me in college, I ended up seeing those guys in the pros on a pro staff somewhere like that.
I'm assuming your wrestling career was short-lived at Tulane.
Oh, yes, it was. Yes, it was. We got one time, it was during, I guess, spring football, and they gave us an opportunity, and they brought the wrestling match over in the old field house over there, and something happened, and there was some kind of obstacle that we had the opportunity to wrestle and to be the ultimate thing for the spring. So it ended up coming down, I think, me and Jimmy Boyle, some kind of way we had to win. Now, Brian Douglas wrestled. He was a state champ wrestling. But in some kind of way, it came down to me and Jimmy Boyle wrestling for something to happen. The guy said, you know, he wrestled in high school throughout. He's a state champ in wrestling and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of funny. That's the only time I got a chance to wrestle other than teaching an intramural course over there for Dr. Hayashi at that time for wrestling.
I got to ask you about your Tulane career because your teams, I mean, listen, I know Lionel Washington's been on there. They beat LSU 3 out of 4 times. He played them. That's rare. You're part of the only back-to-back bowl seasons, at least the first one for sure. And I believe it was 79 and 80, your sophomore and junior season. John went to bowls, great seasons. One was under Larry Smith, one was under Vince Gibson. Correct. But talk about what Tulane football was about back then.
Tulane football was exciting in the regards that when I got recruited, we were all on the edge in the regards that, they talk about when you go out to look at other schools or visit other schools. Well, they're going to drop that program down there. We were always on the cuff and always on the edge of it talking about dropping the program.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And that was the undertone all the time. I go to other colleges.
Look at that. Hey, by the way, the fro's fantastic. That is fantastic. You look like you were on the White Shadow.
Yeah. But, we go backwards and forth, and I go to different colleges and to visit, and they tell me, are you sure? They talking about dropping the program. Okay, so when I came down on my official visit, and this viewing and not viewing, but actually, seeing the campus, touring and that kind of thing, one of the alumni said, no, we're not going to drop the program. I said, okay. So that kind of reassured me from that standpoint of view. So we're kind of, I guess would say, kind of the building block with the team at that time.
You were Tulane Hall of Famer, obviously, Sugar Bowl Hall of Fame, but I got to tell you, when you were playing tight end, it's not the pass-happy tight end thing now where, Jimmy Graham's getting all the 1,200 yards, but you were one of the elites, period. I remember everybody plays fantasy football now, but I was playing in '88, and I had you literally, and I'm not saying that because you're here, you were on my very first fantasy team, picked tight end now. Of course, you were a Tulane guy, so that played part. But you were a 3-time Pro Bowler. Talk about that. You played you played with, I should say, quarterback Ken Anderson early in your career. And then you went to a Super Bowl with a guy named Boomer Esiason. And talk about those two guys and playing there and going to the Super Bowl.
Kenny was a very smart quarterback, and it was ironic at that same time. I got drafted, and it was probably the longest draft. The first round went probably the longest. There might have been one after that.
1982 draft?
Right.
Yeah, right.
The first round was probably the longest ever.
Why was that?
Because it was some trades that took place. I remember Russ Franson being traded from New England to San Francisco, and I think Burt Jones got traded. There was a bunch of stuff going on, but I'm sitting in at the facility at that time up north in Michigan, and it's 12 o'clock. I said, "Oh shucks, man, it must be the 6th round." I'm in the 6th round, and then the phone rang, and it was Lenny and Fonnie that was our coach, our offensive coordinator in '79.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
so Lenny happened to be the offensive coordinator for the Bengals when I got drafted.
Right.
And he called me, "Hey, Rod, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing okay." He said, "Well, we pick you in the 3rd round." He said, "If something come up, we got you in the 3rd round." I said, "Okay."
So you thought you was like so late. It was
so I could have went a little
round,
earlier, but then he told me, something come up, so we got you in the 3rd round.
Well, that would be the 2nd round today with all the draft picks they have. They have less teams. So I'm going to call you a 2nd rounder.
Okay.
All right.
That'll work.
All right. But going to the Super Bowl had to be special. I mean, come on. That is what we all play for. There's the individual accolades, being a Pro Bowler, but being in the Super Bowl, you played against the San Francisco 49ers, Joe Montana, one of the most memorable Super Bowls in Super Bowl history, quite frankly.
That year was a very special year for that team. I mean, we just come off I think it was a short-lived season. It was a strike in 87.
The strike in 87, yeah.
And one thing we had, I think our season ended up, it was 3-11, 3-13, or something like that. It was a dismal year.
Well, it was strike shortened, so they played less games, right?
And the whole situation, everybody was kind of questionable in that regards. I was kind of banged up from being hurt going into the preseason, and everybody was kind of doubting themselves in that regards. And Sam Weiss did something special that year that kind of, maybe go down in the history of the organization. But Sam picked different roommates. Now, I never had a roommate. I wasn't that antisociable or nothing like that, but I stayed on the 3rd floor in the dorm at training camp, and I had a room by myself. But what he did, he actually brought the team closer together. So he kind of had you guys, crossed the barrier line or the racial line. You had black guys with white guys. And so forth. But it helped the team to be closer and closer. And that whole year was a memorable year from the standpoint of view when we opened up the season against, at that time, they were St. Louis Cardinals, and Neil Lomax was the quarterback. We beat them in Riverfront Stadium, and the season kind of went from there. I mean, we rattled off like 6 wins right away. We ended up losing a heartbreaker, which we shouldn't have lost, but we lost one to New England. Then come back and play Buffalo and beat Buffalo in a game, and then turn around and then had to play Buffalo in the championship game.
Right.
But the whole season was a long season. I mean, I left home July the 6th. I didn't come home until after February.
Wow, that's long.
We played a Hall of Fame game.
It doesn't stink, though, when you go into a Super Bowl.
Oh, no, by no way, shape, or form. I know you got guys in the Hall of Fame will love to play that one game, and it's vice versa. You got guys in the Hall of Fame.
Look at the Pro Bowl. You got the lay on right there.
Oh, yeah.
Getting it done. Hey, by the way, I have to say this. People forget how good that Bengals team was and how close you were to winning that Super Bowl. San Francisco, of course, to Joe Montana, the greatest drive, I think, in Super Bowl history. You'll say it's the worst, but he hits Joe Taylor. That's the famous drive where he looks up and says in the huddle, "Hey, is that John Candy in the crowd?" And everybody's like, "Dude, we got to score." And he went like 90 yards to do it to John Taylor. But what were your thoughts going through that and watching him do the drive? Did you think he was going to get it done?
I don't know. I said this where I was hoping he didn't get it done at that point in time. I mean, they had went up, and then we got the ensuing kickoff and take it in for a touchdown. So we go ahead of them then. And we had a big stop. They come out on the 20-yard line. We get them inside the 20 on the opposing kickoff.
Right,
we get them inside the 20-yard line. Oh, God, it's great. It's under 2 minutes. Wow, we got it. It was almost feel the ring going on your finger at that point in time.
You were ready. The ring is getting fitted.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
So you're watching that, and I actually closed my eyes during that period of time, basically because I was on the sideline at that time, cheering the defense on, watching this. You know who they're trying to go to. The Jerry Rice was the premier receiver at that point in time. So, we kind of doubled Jerry in that regard. So it came down to the big play down at the end of the end zone. A field goal wouldn't have helped them to win the game, and they weren't going to try to go for the field goal. And
down the middle, John Taylor.
John just happened to
work
a play.
Forever.
Oh yeah, John worked the play. What they normally do is work the end line in the end zone, and it just went past our strong safety.
You remember what college he went to?
No idea.
Even smaller than yours. Delaware State.
There you go.
There you go. You got some trivia. And better than yet, I'm giving you 2 gift certificates right
okay.
here. You deserve
Hey,
it.
thank you very
Tulane
much.
legend. Take your wife. Take her twice.
Thank you very much.
By the way, they add up to the same thing as what my next guest is going to get. His name's Jeff Wickersham. Rodney, I got to thank you. We have a tradition.
My pleasure.
If you sign the ball, we got some big names on there.
Oh, I see
how about
that.
the Angry Wave? You liking that these days?
Oh, yeah.
I used to have an Angry Wave T-shirt back when in like 1978 when this guy was playing. Hey, that was great. I want to thank also Lyons Yellin, who was earlier. Don't forget, we're going to talk horses with Tom Amos at the end. But next, I have Jeff Wickersham. When he left LSU, he was the all-time leading passer. And even in this pass-happy SEC now, he is still second on LSU's all-time list. He's coming up next on Primetime Sports. Stay tuned.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my, oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At Mid-City Lane's the home of rock and roll.
The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Wickersham family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans. Welcome back to Primetime Sports. I love that segment with Tulane legend Rodney Holman. And now we're going from one state legend to another. We're going up the river to Baton Rouge because I have, well, let me say, LSU's second all-time leading passer. In fact, when he left in 1985, he was number 1 in that category, passed by the great Tommy Hodson right after that. His name's Jeff Wickersham, and he's from Lake Merritt Island. I said Lake Merritt, Merritt Island, Florida, and he's now here in the studio. Welcome to the show, bud.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. By the way, I got to say this. You were at LSU from 82 to 85. People probably, I was in school when you were there, so people remember you fondly. But first thing I got to say is, what have you been up to now? What you doing?
I have an industrial marine supply company with 3 locations. We have a place in Houston, here in New Orleans, and then one also in Alabama.
So that's going well?
Yes, sir. Keeping me busy.
There's no sir. You're a year older than me. Hold on. All right, the next question I have to ask is, obviously you're from Merritt Island, Florida. You had options. I know Florida wanted you. I did my research. But it came down to a couple other schools besides Florida, LSU and another pretty prominent school at the time.
Yeah, there was fortunately I was recruited by several different schools throughout the country, and I really loved LSU. We used to watch them when they would come to the Tangerine Bowl.
Sure.
So I became interested in them at that point. Mac Brown recruited me, which was a big reason why I came to LSU. But I also came very close to going to Stanford. When I went out there, John Elway was my host and showed me around, and I really enjoyed that school. It was just a little bit too far away, and then I just liked LSU a little bit more.
That would have been interesting to sit behind Elway for a year or two, because I know he was in that famous 83 draft. So I guess you would have been sitting back behind him like 1 year like you kind of did with Alan Risher. But why'd you like Stanford so much? Because Elway's dad was also the coach, wasn't he?
That's right. I liked the campus. I liked the atmosphere that they had out there. They'd always been successful, had great quarterbacks coming out of there. But then again, so did LSU. And I think what changed my mind was, of course, Mac Brown was really big. Coach Stovall was great, loved him. And then the LSU fan base was just so much more crazy than Stanford would have ever thought.
People forget that Mac Brown was an assistant at LSU. He ended up going to Tulane, then obviously North Carolina, and we all remember the national championship at Texas. Great recruiting ground. Burt Jones had been a quarterback. He was the 76 NFL MVP about a decade before you got there. But you sat behind Alan Richard that first year, but it's kind of rare. You got to go to 2 major bowls. 82, you were back up, and y'all went to the Orange Bowl, and that was a huge year. I remember the oranges being thrown at that last game in the regular season. Did you almost beat Nebraska in that game?
We did. We played really well. We had a great team that year, and barely lost at the end of the game. Just a super experience.
And then you got to be a 3-year starter, and those happened to be my first 3 years in college. So I got to see you every game. I can't say every home game I completely saw you clearly because that's LSU, but we had some good times. I love this shot against Alabama, the guy diving. The name looks great on the back of a jersey, but talk about what your memories are from those 3 years.
Well, we had some great memories, had some great teams. I was very fortunate to play with some awesome players. We had good coordinators. We had great head coaches. It was just a lot of fun that you think about it and you wish you could go back and play it again.
Well, you went to the Sugar Bowl when you were, was that your senior year?
Yes, it was.
In 1985. I remember this game well. I was there. I had a fraternity member, Chip Campbell, who was like the end of y'all's bench, but he was in that game. But you got 2 different coaches in 2 different major bowls. That's even rare because obviously you had Coach Stovall in that first was it 2 years?
2 years, yes.
2 years, yeah. First Stovall, and you went to the Orange Bowl. And then you had Arnsbarger, who had been, a great assistant coach in the NFL, had been a head coach, I think, with Giants and Dolphins and all those teams. So what was it like between these 2 guys?
Well, Stovall was more of a personal type of coach. He was very close to the players, very good recruiter, things like that. Arnsbarger came in and was more of a pro-style coach. It was, this is the way we're going to do it. We're not hitting as much in practice anymore. So he took a more business-like approach to the game and was also more of a defensive mind, I think, than Stovall. So fortunately we had great running backs, Hilliard and James. So we tried to get the ball in those guys' hands as much as possible when Arnsbarger was there, because there's a lot less that could go wrong.
You know what I did not know, because I had Charles Alexander on recently, my favorite LSU player of all time. You're second. But I was mentioning the great backs that LSU's had. Jim Taylor, I was mentioning obviously Billy Cannon, and I was going through Dalton Hilliard, Kevin Falk, and even more recently Leonard Fournette. But Jerry Stovall was the SEC Player of the Year and the 2nd pick in the NFL draft. I mean, I knew he was great, but when I did my research looking up for your show, I didn't realize he was that good. Coming in when he was recruiting you, did you know that?
I did know that. I did some research on him. I believe he was also the Heisman Trophy runner-up.
So
he was a really, really good player, and also I think one of the best coaches I've ever played for. I really liked him a lot.
Yeah, and then obviously, they coached against some great guys. We have a shot of him coaching against Bear Bryant, Arnsbarger obviously against Lou Holtz. I mean, you got to play against these great schools each and every week. What was it like with the pageantry going into those stadiums and obviously them coming to visit Tiger Stadium?
It was amazing. We played Tennessee, Alabama. We played the cream of the crop, and it was always a huge game for us being on the road against some of those types of teams. I always enjoyed playing away as much as I did at home, just to kind of see what we could do to quiet the crowd down. But to come home and play in front of the LSU fans was there's no place like it in the country. I know Tennessee has more fans in the stands, but I can promise you they're not nearly as loud as ours.
Was there any favorite place that you look forward to visiting?
I did like to play at Tennessee because they had such a large number of people.
Stadium.
But they were polite fans. They didn't boo us.
They weren't Florida fans?
Right. And my second favorite place was playing at Florida, being from Florida.
Right.
And they were a lot rougher on us. They would throw things at us and curse us, and it was a lot of fun playing.
I was at the 21-21 game. That was maybe my first road trip. I took a lot of road trips with friends. We went over there. It was a hot day in the swamp, and I remember that. Hodson, he was your successor. He was the red shirt. He got to start 4 years, and if you had a chance to red shirt, you might still be holding that LSU record, because I don't know if you know this, even though he had over 9,000 yards, he left LSU as the #1 passer in the entire Southeastern Conference, and it just goes to show you how pass happy he is. Now he's 16th behind guys like the 2 Manning brothers, obviously Werfel, Zaire, Tebow, and then the leader, Aaron Murray. But you have more yards per season when you're starting. So when you see Hodson next time, say, hey, you may have the record, but do you have the yards per season?
Well, Tommy was a great quarterback. I knew he was going to be very good. He redshirted my senior year, and we became pretty close friends, and he had a heck of a lot of talent, much more than I did. So I knew he would come in and break all the records, which he did. And he had also went on to have a really great pro career. So I enjoyed being around Tommy, liked him a lot, and wished him nothing but success.
Now, I know you ended up you were a draft pick with the Miami Dolphins, and I know I'm assuming that had to be one of your favorite teams growing up in Florida. What was it like going through training camp, playing a little bit in the preseason, getting to see the other guys like the Dan Marino, who had obviously just been there a couple of years, but what was it like going through that process with the team you grew up loving?
It was awesome. I really didn't want to go to Miami because I knew I didn't really have a chance. They had Dan Marino, Don Strock,
and Jim Jensen.
And they had Jensen, who was
Jack of all trades
guy. Yeah, he could play
right?
everything. So I knew my chances weren't going to be real good on sticking with the team. But I tell you, I really did enjoy being around Dan Marino, watching him practice and play. He taught me a lot in that little amount of time I was there, and was just a great guy to be around.
What did you do right after that? Did you go play up in Canada? I mean, I can't remember. I seem to remember somewhere in Canada.
I did. I went and played for Ottawa for 2 years up there. Had a great time. Wide open offense, throwing every down virtually. Ended up blowing out my knee, and then decided that maybe I better look into something I can do forever.
We got to go back to this LSU team because that offense with you. I mean, obviously you were sticking over. You're the first LSU quarterback over 2,000 3 straight years. First quarterback to even get to 5,000 yards. And you ended up getting up to 7,000 just about, passing obviously the guy you replaced, Alan Risher. But what was it like playing with that two-headed monster at running back? The Dalton James game. Dalton Hilliard obviously is an LSU and Saints legend. There's Gary James on the left who was 23 there. He ends up being number 33. But what was it like playing with those guys and then throw Eric Martin in the mix, who also was a Saints legend?
Yeah, it was an unbelievable experience having that many talented guys around you. Our offensive line was super. We had great offensive linemen, great protection. Really made my job as a passer a lot easier, being able to hand the ball off to these guys. They couldn't just key on and drop back in coverage, or these guys would burn them. So it made me a much better quarterback having these guys.
There's James there, and there's Dalton right there. But, I mean, everybody remembers Dalton. It seems like through the years people forgot James, but he was the much higher recruit coming out, wasn't he?
He was. I think Gary was probably the highest rated recruit on our team. I mean, he ran a 4.2 40, had great speed, great power. Dalton was just unbelievable in the stop-start. He was so fast from 0 to 60.
Too.
Yeah, huge thighs, very powerful, and they really complemented each other.
The Heisman right there, he is the man. Because we had Charles Alexander had his Heisman thing. It was Alexander and the number 4 Heisman, so he had his run too. Dalton did. But let's talk about your family real quick, because obviously you have a son that's 6'2" in 8th grade at Jesuit. Is he going to be in the family tree of a quarterback possibly playing college?
I hope so. He's doing really well right now. He's coming along. He's learning the position. He's a pretty darn good athlete.
8th grade. He's as tall as you are.
Yeah. He's actually passed me a little bit now. And then, but no, I think he's going to end up being a pretty good athlete, and looking forward to watching him. Speaking
of athletes, your daughter at Mount Carmel, I got to throw this in because just this past weekend, it was pretty special, wasn't it?
It really was. We had such a good time watching the team. Our team played well all year, but boy, they really came together this weekend and just really walked through the competition to win the state championship. It was super exciting.
State championship in softball. I won't name the team that they beat because I have friends that have kids on that team, but they beat them good, 15-0 in the state championship. But she also won a state championship last year in volleyball, right?
Right. It was actually her junior year this year, but back in previous, but they won
same year, right?
Same year, right?
So
same
she's
school
got
year.
2 state championships in the same year.
Yeah, it was great. And like I said, they have such good coaches at Mount Carmel, great teammates. It was just a lot of fun. And I know the team you're mentioning in the state championship, they did an unbelievable job, our opponent, just to get there. They knocked off two
we'll
of
give
the
them some
top
props. It was Dominican. They got
right.
to the finals. No shame in that.
And they did. They played a great game. Their pitching was awesome, and we were excited to play them. I would much rather play a team in our conference that did so well to get there than to play some of these other guys.
Well, this has been a treat. We have a lot of former LSU players. First of all, you and your beautiful wife, you got to take her out. They got a nice wine bistro there. It's called Chez Delachais. Enjoy that.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And we have a great tradition of signing our balls, footballs, and this one right here. I got Charles Alexander on this, Dale Brown, Jordy Holtberg. We got a bunch of guys. So I'd be honored to have you on this as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Jeff Wickersham, this has been a treat. The second all-time leading passer still in this pass-happy era right now in LSU history. And he played back when, listen, we just told you he had 2 running backs that were getting nearly 1,000 yards each, and he had a great squad. So it's so much fun to have him right here. And, hey, by the way, we're going to have a lot of great LSU quarterbacks and running backs and all that, as well as Saints players coming up. This is going to be an incredible month. I even got the mailman, Karl Malone, the second leading scorer in NBA history. He's going to be coming up on this show in this month. But, hey, next, we're going from football, which we've been talking about with our previous 3 guests. We're going to jump into the horses. That's right, because this is the 142nd, I believe, running of the Kentucky Derby this weekend. Coming up next, Tom Amoss, the trainer of Mo Tom, last year's Derby horse, right here on Primetime Sports. That was my man Ephraim E.T. Towns. That's right, E.T. is the lead guy for the Dirty Dozen Brass Band. I saw them Saturday on the Acura stage at the Jazz Fest. Hey, we've had a football show. We've talked to 2 local legends, as well as recapping the entire draft, especially the part with the Saints. But now we're jumping into the horses, because when you talk about the first weekend in May, there's only one thing you should consider if you like racing, and that is the Kentucky Derby. That's this weekend, the running going for the Roses up there in Louisville, Kentucky at Churchill Downs. On this show right now, I have one of Tom Benson's trainers from last year, Mo Tom. He was at the Derby, and his name is Tom Amoss. And Tom is coming to us straight from Louisville, Kentucky. You happen to be at the racetrack right now? Are you on your way, or where you at?
I just got home, so our day starts early for all trainers.
Give us kind of a typical day during the week. You kind of went through this. What does a trainer do the week of the race? I mean, if you had a horse this year in the Derby.
So it wouldn't be much different from if you had a horse in any race. So we're out there early. The day starts for most of us around 5 a.m. We get up around 4, we plan the day, and then we start in the barn at 5 a.m. And the track itself opens to practice on at 6 a.m. And look, just like a person getting ready to run in a road race, you know, these athletes, these equine athletes, they practice too in the mornings. They practice running in different techniques of fast, slow, somewhere in between, as they prepare for running their race. So that's what you'd be doing for any horse, and certainly that applies to the Kentucky Derby horses that are going to run Saturday.
What's the horse that won the Louisiana Derby? His name is Gervin. We know him well, but kind of explain what Joe Sharp, the trainer, is going through right now. His range of emotions, what's he thinking? You know, he's got a horse that's not a favorite, but it's also not one of the long shots. And also he might have a little bit of an injury. What is he going through right now?
Right. So to give you some background on Gervin, he won the Louisiana Derby, and he is the leading point earner of all the Kentucky Derby contenders. So he's accomplished a lot in his resume. But for Joe, other than just the anxiousness of wanting the race to hurry up and happen and hoping his horse runs well, he has run into a problem with one of the horse's foot. And he has what's called a quarter crack. And a quarter crack is actually a split up the hoof wall like you might do to your fingernail. The problem is that each one of those feet, when a horse runs, carries the bulk of the horse's weight, which is anywhere from 1,100 pounds to 1,200 pounds. And when your foot has an issue like that, it becomes a problem as to how well the horse can run with that issue. So he's faced a lot of scrutiny from the press concerning it. He's answered a lot of questions. Gervin has since had a practice breeze, which is a work, which is a fast move, that went well. But even with that, you can't simulate the speed of a race. And so he's a big question mark, and I think Joe's fully aware that if he decides to run him, he's gonna be really facing the media afterwards if it doesn't go well. So a lot of stress, what I would guess Joe's going
So you're
through
saying
right
take the money off of Gervin right now. He's also got it.
Well, you know what? I will say this.
Right.
And this is important, Scott. To win the Derby, you have to be 100%. And any bump in the road is usually means disaster. So, you know, there's always going to be an exception to that rule. But for the handicappers out there, I think a lot of them are putting a line through Gervin and looking elsewhere to put their money.
Tell me this. I know he had Brian Hernandez Jr., you know, on Gervin for the Risen Star at the Fairgrounds, of course, Louisiana Derby. He's now chosen to ride on McCracken, a horse that most consider to be a bigger favorite. What does that mean for Gervin? I know he's got Mike Smith, who's a great rider, particularly at the Kentucky Derby, but is there any kind of psychological thing that goes into this?
I don't think so. I think Gervin is an easy ride, and Mike Smith has won the Derby more than once, whereas Brian Hernandez, who's never won the Derby, is the one that took off of Gervin. So I think that's going to be fine, but it does put you into the mindset of Brian Hernandez, who's ridden both Gerwin and McCracken, and his mindset is McCracken's the better of the two horses.
Got to ask you this. I know this is kind of a wide-open field, as opposed to, say, 2 years ago when American Pharoah won the Triple Crown. We all knew that was a superior horse. Is there one horse in there that you would consider the favorite over all the others?
Yeah, I think the favorite is going to be a horse that's made the second most Derby points coming into this, a horse named Classic Empire, who won the Breeders' Cup 2-year-old championship race, which assembles the best 2-year-olds in the country. Now it's the springtime, and all these same horses have turned 3, and a lot happens between 2 and 3. Think of yourself when you were in the 8th grade and the guys who were really athletic and good, and then think of yourself as when you were a senior in high school and how that changed. You know, as a 2-year-old, athleticism and being precocious is important, but as a 3-year-old, strength and stamina becomes important. It's no different than people. So the tide has changed, but Classic Empire has kept up, and he's run well in all of his races. He also has a bit of an Achilles heel, and that is that he is a horse whose behavior isn't always good. And when his behavior is bad, he has thrown in a bad race. I've watched him over the racetrack here at Churchill Downs this past week, and he's made no mistakes. But he could be, if he runs a good Kentucky Derby, a horse that could sweep the board, because he is, in my opinion, the most talented of all the horses in this race. Behavior could be a problem, though.
The Derby has 20 horses, so this race more than any other, a long shot has a chance, and it has happened. I've seen a 50-1 win this race, and some other long shots have won. Is there one out there that you see that might have some bigger odds that might have a chance to take it home?
You know, if you're gonna ask me to pick one of the horses that are going to be in the starting gate that day, I think the one horse that's going to be a long shot that I don't think you should leave out of your wagering bets, and there's a lot of different ways to wager. You can use the horse in the second, third, or even fourth spot, and as a long shot, if he runs in one of those spots and your ticket contains him, you're going to get a great payoff. A horse trained by Steve Asmussen named Untrapped. Untrapped is a horse that's kind of run in second-place positions behind some of the top horses, but watching him on the racetrack practice this last 2 weeks, and I have watched him, he's the one that's really caught my eye. He's looked very enthusiastic about what he's doing, and he's performed well over the racetrack.
I've been to the Kentucky Derby just a few times, and it's amazing, but never with the perks you have, obviously. So tell people what makes this weekend better than all the rest.
Well, I mean, for a racing fan, what makes it better than all the rest is you're looking at the stars of our sport. You can see them up close and personal. If you're here early, you can come out during the week. You have full access to the horses. Truly, you have full access to the connections of all these horses. So you can really become involved, and there's not a lot of sports like that. Where your best athletes are ones that are, that attainable, and you have access to them. So that's really fun. But for a trainer, it's a moment where so many people converge on the racetrack to watch these horses, and it gives you a sense of importance, whereas on an ordinary day at the racetrack, you don't really necessarily get that. So it's probably the 1 week other than Breeders' Cup week where our profession is in the spotlight, and that's a lot of fun for all of us.
Tom, I can't thank you enough. That's Tom Amos. He's a New Orleanian that still lives here part-time during the year, during the fairground season. He's in Louisville during this time of year and also in Lexington during that Keeneland time. But I can't thank you enough, Tom. He was the trainer for last year's Tom Benson horse named Mo Tom, and hopefully he'll be back in the Derby again with another horse. So I appreciate you so much for coming on the show, buddy.
It was my honor, Scott. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. That's Tom Amos. And, hey, I'm not just thanking him. I'm going to thank everybody. This has been a great show, big football show. Like I said, Rodney Holman, I can't say enough about this guy. Tulane legend. Of course, Jeff Wickersham, LSU legend. And then Lyons, Yellin. Well, he's a legend around this city because he knows what he's talking about, and he told you all about the Saints draft. But Will Hill, I got Christy back there. Hey, I got Big Smooth. That's right, Josh Smith. And don't forget my man that makes it all sound good. his name, Kenny Juno and the Redhead Tsunami, Ron, and everybody else at WLAE and CST. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week right here on Primetime Sports.